And we're live and we're here. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Another week of We Are Sober podcast. And Justin, Jena, and the crew. Hello, the crew. That's right.
Hello.
The crew. I hope you're happy about that.
What's up?
I am obviously in a new environment. I have been put out of my room for a week because my bathtub has flooded my bedroom carpeting. And so now that it's all fixed, I still need to get all that restoration done. So now I'm just in my office, which is without purple pillows. So I'm sad.
Are you unable to relocate your pillows? Are they attached to your...
They are attached to the locations on my floor. So they are unmovable.
It's good to know that they didn't take damage and weren't, in no way harmed by this this whole bath-tacular event.
Bath-tacular. That's a good word. You know how expensive Euro pillows are? Not just the pillows, the stuffing, but like the covering, the cases.
Mm-hmm.
Lord.
The bath
And who would have thought you have to buy the pillow separate from the case? I knew, but it sucks. It's more money.
Weird.
What is this nonsense?
It's wasteful. Yeah, not enough about me. Talk to me about you guys. How's it going?
Had a
It's going
great
okay.
week.
How did everybody's 4th of July celebration go for those that
That's right.
celebrate?
Lots of kabooms everywhere. Many
Did
kabooms.
you kaboom,
Yeah.
Rollin?
We did more like because we did like those ones that just kind of like spray up, fireworks on the ground. And
Yeah, they're
I
like
played,
fountains or something.
yeah, and I played Codenames with a couple of my cousins, and it got really intense. They really wanted to know who was the best at Codenames, and the sister and brother ended up tying. So they're just like, we tried to have a game to like figure out which one won, but then they still ended up tying. So they're like, you know what, our family is the winner. And we're just like, okay, whatever.
Do I remember that game? I don't remember that game.
I played
one
ladder ball for the first time ever.
Ladder ball.
I
What's
have
ladder
no idea
ball?
what that is.
Yeah, so it's like there's like a 3-rung ladder, and there's two balls on a rope, and you have to like throw the rope, and it has to wrap around one of the ladder rungs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you kind of have a. What are those things called? That the
Bolas.
the bolos. Yeah, it's like a bolo.
I
A
guess
bolo.
Yeah. That's where it's
Right.
the two balls attached by a string, and you kind of throw
Yeah,
them and like wrap
we
around.
kept breaking the strings and retying it and knocking over the ladders, and it became a thing.
Just throwing them harder and harder.
I don't remember it being called that.
Well,
I never
part of the
heard.
game was that if you knock the other person's balls off of the ladder, then the points don't count.
Okay.
Huh.
It's very difficult to like high speed pitch 2 balls on a string.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah, remember there was one year when my uncle was like giving away. It might have been for 4th of July, but he was like, "I'll give away prizes if people do one of these, like, can complete 5 or one of 5 of these tasks." And one of them was one of those where you had to throw the bolos on. You had to make like a certain number of points, and depending on which ladder rung you got on, you got that many points. So people were trying to do that.
Don't you have that uncle that, you just claim to be his niece or nephew and he just gives you shit?
I don't know about that, but I mean, if
Something
I have an uncle, then I am his niece. I don't have to claim it.
I mean, that's fair. That's
But
fair.
no,
Okay.
I do have an uncle who like does not have any kids and has had a pretty good job and like literally has no expenses because his house has been paid for since like the 80s or it's been in their family since the 60s. So he's just able to drop like several $1,000s worth of things every Easter for like a big Easter egg hunt, even though the youngest cousin, who's not like a baby cousin, is like 21.
So everyone gets money.
Yeah. There's always one family
Like
that
it.
always gets the most money, so we're convinced they're cheating somehow. Or they just always know where to go to get the big money. They don't go
Cool.
for small fry like the rest of us.
Wait, Justin, did you say you lit fireworks? You had your own?
That was also a thing. So we probably had like 4 or 5 different people contribute. We bought a lot, like way more than anybody should. And then we lit them all off, and 99% of it went really well, exactly as planned. We had one which was a box of mortars, like a 16-shot mortar box, and 3 of the mortars blew out the side of the box towards us. So we were on one side, the people that were letting them off, and then everybody else that was watching, all the families, were on the other side. There was probably like 20 or 30 people there. And so I got hit in the foot. One other guy got hit in the face, and it kind of bounced off. But so we were lucky in that they didn't explode near us. They hit us and then ricocheted off.
You did that crazy Ivan like in Red October and got too close, so the missile hadn't armed yet, right? When it bounced off your face.
Yeah, we don't know what happened. The box didn't fall over or anything. It shot out the side of the box.
Effective.
And then the rest of it, everything went really well. Other than getting
I had
blown
one
up.
blow up. I had one blow up between my legs 10 years ago, maybe, and nothing happened to me. So I was real lucky.
Yeah. Well, if it
The guy
didn't
was
hurt
blown
you,
off and it fell over, and
if
it
you
wasn't
didn't get
that big
hurt,
of an explosion, really.
that means that nobody ever gets hurt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can't get hurt if it's like you want to hear a good story. The fire chief of my town, when they were blowing off the city fireworks a few years ago, looked down the tube during a dud, and it went off and blew off half of his face. So, and he was the fire chief. Somebody who should have known better, right?
All of the duds that we had, I filled up a 5-gallon bucket of water, and we just dumped the whole box into the bucket of water, and then we let them dry out, and then we threw all the boxes and canisters and stuff away.
Justin's the new fire chief.
Y'all are dangerous.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we need somebody like him, right?
Unacceptable. I didn't do shit. It was hot. It was fucking hot that day. I think the previous weekend was my sister's bridal shower, and then 4th of July was the next weekend. I was just like, we were just chill, and we try to find food if places were open.
I went to Taco Bell that night, and
gross.
Yeah, it was like a 30-minute wait, and they only had like hard shell tacos or something, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, I can't be mad. It's like 1 a.m. at Taco Bell on 4th of July, and they're just completely out of everything.
Every place was out of everything, like the 2 days before, and I was like, this is unacceptable. But whatever. And that's the barbecue. Ollie, man, what'd you do on the 4th of July?
Not much.
Did you celebrate
It was pretty quiet.
the freedom of the greatest country in the world?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I did
man.
that on the 1st.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Damn. Got it.
Canada Day. There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, we don't have to talk much about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We'll allow you to be free.
No. All right. Well, this week's topic kind of carries us from last week's topic as far as recognizing. Oh, no, we're not going to do the hat. Thank you. No. Oh, by the way, Ollie, man, like the boom mic, you look all fancy. Each week, you just look fancier and fancier.
I know. Look, we told you one time that your audio had like a little bit of background noise, and now it's like
I'm spending thousands of dollars.
$1,000.
So then I spent some money.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're like a professional radio host, DJ now.
Presenting Ollie, man. Gosh. No, it's cool. I can't wait to see what you got next week. He'd be like, I got dual monitors.
He's gonna have a whole booth next week.
No, he's
know.
already done. He's got a
done.
green screen already up. You just can't tell
That's right.
because it's a green screen of his backyard. You know, of his
It's
room.
legit. Sometimes you can see a dog in the background. That's cool.
He took
I
a
don't know how you do
picture
that.
of his house and then put it on the green screen, and now there's a party going on. You never see it.
Just
And
speaking of
Mike's
my house.
so directional and so perfectly attuned that it doesn't pick up any of the noise from the party. Just all the
That's
Damn.
right. The construction work that was going on over here over the last week and a half was pretty much finished today. They still got to come back next month and do some other stuff, but I got all the new siding up, all new windows and doors. So yeah, no, it was a pretty good upgrade.
Yeah,
So
very nice.
That's cool. I'm feeling it. No problem.
Yeah, my window upgrade really
No
was helpful.
problem.
No problem.
But we don't have to go into that.
We'll touch on that later, Malty. Trust me. We'll bring up your segment. I'm so excited. Anyways, yes. this week we bridged from talking about deconverters and cradle atheists. Some of us are cradle atheists here. Some of us deconverters. Some of us just say like, oh, we're just skeptic. So fuck you. And that's okay. But, you know, this is interesting because this is kind of what Justin wanted to bridge and talk about as far as, you know, recognizing if you have to be a person that has to be philosophical and philosophize the things of being the thing. Yeah. Philosophy. Which I know very little about. I just know certain names and terms that I still don't understand. I'm learning. I'm being open to it. But I mean, you know, you have your thing.
Yeah, so the question primarily revolves around the label itself and how identifying as such and or using that word in conversation in certain contexts just leads to a lot of confusion, and then also leads to almost like perpetual arguments over the definition of the word, right? So if in certain contexts, namely in the philosophy world, the word atheist or the title atheist is someone who claims that there are no gods, right? But it's outside of just the specific claim itself. It's a philosophical position. It's a philosophical title or identity, and we use it in a more casual way of simply saying synonymous with non-believer, or sometimes with I don't know, or so agnostic, or with someone who just hasn't really thought about it, or what we talked about last week, cradle atheist, someone who's never even been presented with the idea before, who's never had to make a decision or isn't even aware that a decision is there to be made. So it's not like, you know, this isn't about to be designed to be like a debate or an argument about it, just like a conversation of to use that title, or should we get away from using that title or using that I label if we don't have any background and understand what it really means in those other contexts, or is there something better that makes more sense and will cause us less problems going forward? Not that I don't think there's enough. I think there's too much momentum now, because we tend, a lot of these times on these types of labels, we don't label ourselves. We get labeled as such by other people. So you can't just change that. But it's still like an interesting idea of, is there a better way to start a conversation or get on a better common ground when approaching these discussions?
I mean, so it's always better to just talk about, like, not the label and just the actual, you know, your position. Instead of someone's, because some people be like, well, according to my definition of atheist, you're not an atheist. I'd be like, either way, I still don't believe in God. Like, you know, that's, if that's what you want to argue and say, oh, you're not an atheist, I'm like, all right, well, under my definition, I am one. But the whole point is, or the important part is what I believe versus what I don't believe, etc. Rather than like whether I use the right word or the right label exactly, like whether it's using atheist or agnostic. Either way, my position will change.
So just to kind of retouch on what you were saying, Justin, are you saying we should remove classifying ourselves as cradle atheists, or something else?
No, it's not. It's not like a proclamation that we should do a thing. It's more of like recognizing that in some contexts, it's not necessarily the best label to use, especially to self-identify. But there's probably more good from using a label such as this, because it's more power in numbers. So when you start looking at political voting, like voting blocks and stuff like that, you have like nuns, and then you have people that are like identify as atheists, identify as agnostic, identify as spiritual but not religious. So if you start, if you, the more labels you add to that, the more divided those voting blocks become. So if this is kind of where we're already being placed, it might be better to stick with that. But in terms of like having a conversation with people, like you see in the chat, when you use a label or a title, there's already, it comes with a package of assumptions about what you believe. And when you, in certain contexts, certain people, when you use the word atheist, they're going to say that you identify as this label. And so these are all of the things that you believe or that come with it that I'm saddling upon you, especially when you have a conversation that's more philosophical in nature. So it's probably not that we need to use something else that we should. It's just a conversation about should we encourage more people to be more aware of the philosophical context of it, or should we just say, hey, this is what I was called when I said I didn't believe, and I'm just sticking with it, and whatever it may mean, this is the word that I use.
Is that useful?
I don't know.
I guess it would depend. It really would. If I want to be pedantic, as I sometimes do, I will say, no, I am atheist. I'm trying to be apathetic, but I'm not quite there. But I am atheist. Atheism kind of falls into that, underneath that umbrella, but as long as you can then move the conversation forward to what does that mean? How does that relate to the question that's being proposed of religion versus non-religion, without it being, oh, you're just being, pedantic and an asshole.
Yeah.
It's
when you use something other than an easy to box in label, or something that doesn't come with a packaged set of beliefs and positions to easily argue against, then you're just seen as being snarky and somebody who's trying to be more difficult to communicate with than necessary, instead of being more precise.
Yeah, I think the labels are easy. You just say, oh, I'm an atheist, or even if it's something like, oh, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, I'm, in this category of people can just, it's easier to say that rather than trying to go into a whole discussion about what exactly you believe or what exactly you mean when you say that. Because someone can say, oh, I'm a Republican, but does that automatically mean that they're, they follow everything the Republicans say, they agree with everything the Republicans do, they, worship at the altar of Trump and everything? But it's like, no, but in order for them to have to go through in detail everything that they actually believe that might correspond or not correspond with the Republican Party just takes longer. So they just say, I'm a Republican or I'm an atheist. It's just easier.
Right.
So then, yeah.
I was say right, no. the issue is partially that people aren't 100% sure what they believe, and they have similar belief, but it's difficult to have a conversation when you don't have a starting point. So these labels are useful as starting points of we have a general idea of where we stand on certain positions. The issue is really that we lock and hold each other to these starting points rather than moving the conversation forward.
Right. No, because there's. Sorry, finish point.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say I've gotten into a few conversations where we couldn't get to that starting point, where I had the other person insisting that I was his label and not my label. So and that's because, let's face it, the word atheism sometimes carries negative connotations for some people. And this deist that I was talking to was just insisting that I wasn't an atheist because I didn't believe that there was no God. Right.
And
so we couldn't even get to a starting point because of that.
And that
right?
negative connotation comes from what they believe is the definition of the word. And that negative connotation comes from them being taught to that word or that label means I am confident or I am sure or that no gods exist or no gods can possibly exist, or even worse, and that atheists worship the devil or believe in the devil or worship evil, or that they have no moral compass. So all these other things that come with that label, but you're being held to it with no room to expound upon it or to correctly identify as anything.
Yeah.
What I've bumped into in real life is people saying, "Why do you hate God?" when you label yourself with atheist, and it's that's just not what it means. It's hard to speak with those people because they don't want to come to grips with that's not what I'm saying at all. So, but yeah,
I want, because there certainly is a variety of atheists. First, like you said, Justin, there's the baseline of, claiming your atheism and claiming your disbelief or non-belief or no God absolute or whatever you may hold. And then there are atheists like you're just touching on what I was going to say: strong atheists, soft atheists, atheists that are anti-theist, atheists that are a bit more positive, atheists that are a bit more progressive, atheists that are conservative, so on and so forth. So when you have so much of this variety, obviously it becomes muddled. But as you also said, someone placing their claim of atheism for them onto you is personable. So it is not that much different than when a theist tries to explain their claim for God, when they say, "Oh, I had this personal life experience, God spoke to me," things like that. So I obviously don't see any difference in that when it comes to non-believers and when theists mention their own personal belief and faith in a God. So that's interesting. And then one also interesting distinction. So you have theists, you have atheism. So where does agnosticism fall into play?
It's a different question.
Yeah. So typically what we see on the more popular current atheist type shows is agnosticism is about knowledge, and theism and atheism is about belief, right? So but in practical terms, it's the difference between knowledge and belief is your level of certainty and what you're basing those beliefs on. So you claim you know something when you have sufficient justification to claim to have that knowledge. But I think most people, myself included, in most situations, we can't distinguish between what we believe or strongly believe or what we know, because that line is very blurry of what counts as sufficient justification. Because most people would say that they wouldn't believe something unless they had a good reason to or a good justification for believing in it.
And I hate to point this out, but this is too black and white. You can't justify, the world with just black and white. Oh, it has to be God or it's not. There's a lot of additional factors when it comes to belief, rational thinking, logic, skepticism, all that stuff. So I was driving to a point and I lost it. Go ahead, Multi.
No, thank you. That kind of leads me to, so am I atheist or am I agnostic in my statement that I could consider myself atheist? When I look at that question, it has to be God or has to be not God. Which God? Or whose interpretation of which God? And so once we can get that hammered out, then I can actually give you a response to your question. But you need to give me a question that I can actually, that's not just smoke. That isn't so to each person's interpretation.
Right. So you didn't really explain it, but Atheist is someone who says that the question itself is incoherent because the concept of God is so ill-defined that you can't even begin to decide whether you believe in it or not. Just kind of broadly. And
well, is it just ichthyists as to like God in general? Because someone can like describe to you what they believe their God is, and then you can decide based on their description.
Right, but that's different than somebody just saying, "Do you believe in God?" Right now, depending on the context, the neighborhood, the church, or the place that you might be in, the person asking the question, you might have a very clear understanding of what they're talking about or what they're describing. But just generally, just broadly, you know, the question, you know, from the atheist is that you're everything that you're saying is just a claim. It's just an assertion. There's no evidence to back up that this thing is even possible or could even potentially exist or make sense in any way.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at the Bodhisattvas, if I'm looking at Shiva, if I'm looking at Yahweh, I have no way of discerning the strength of any of those claims. So, I mean, I can't answer your question about that. So yeah, it's not just black or white, you know, when you're looking at something that is just full gray. Exactly.
Well, I mean, the way I see it is that, you know, you have to reach a certain threshold to be considered a theist, and that's you believe that there is a God. Now, you can be like unsure, unable to like determine based on it, and or like totally think it's a bunch of nonsense. But if you fall anywhere between like total nonsense and really don't understand it, so you're not going to make it a position, then you don't believe, so therefore you're not a theist. Like they kind of make it so it's like, oh, you're either and then the whole thing with like Gnostic versus agnostic, it's just agnostic means you either believe you can't know or you don't know. Gnostic means you know. So if you say I'm a Gnostic atheist, that means you'd be saying I know that there is no God, and therefore I believe there's no God.
Right, and that would be
it's more like I don't know if there's a God, but I'm not convinced, therefore that
Gnostic atheists have a burden of proof.
Yeah.
Well, you can also paint that on the Dawkins, the 1 through 7 scale, where 7 is strong atheism, where it's you know, I know for sure that there's no God, and 6 and 5 are more towards, you know, I don't know, but I don't believe it. I don't see any evidence for it. What was that question that you had up?
Well, I'm wondering if you can be
right
an agnostic theist is someone who like isn't sure that there is one but believes that there is a God. I just feel like that's not like
I don't think you're saying that right.
Or just it's just an incoherent one to not.
He's saying it right. You can be a agnostic theist. Now
you can
problem,
be, but I think it's that you don't have knowledge or proof that there is a God, but you believe there's a God.
Right, but you know, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, is that there is a reason that you believe it. There's a reason that you are convinced of this proposition to be true. You don't just choose to believe something just to choose to believe it. There's some argument, some reason, some evidence that was presented to you that caused you to have this belief. Now, how do you go from there to now I know that it's true?
I guess it's kind of the whole thing, like comparing belief versus knowledge. Like, right, like, you know, in a non-religious thing, I believe my car is in the driveway right now because I just drove it there and I left it there and I didn't hear it, you know, drive off. But for all I know, when I was, you know, while I was listening to this, it got stolen. So I don't know it's there, but I believe it is. So it's kind of the same thing where it's like, I guess I'm agnostic as to whether my car is there because I don't know for certain that it's there. And for the theist, it's like, well, I don't know for certain that God is there, but I believe because of.
Yeah, but there's a practical application of this of where you right now it's the middle of the night for us. Is the sky dark or not? Do you believe it? You're not looking at it, but it would be unreasonable to say you don't know. When everything that you know about the world, that your whole worldview and everything that's ever been provided to you, all of the information you've ever seen will point towards the sky being dark and there's stars and blah blah blah. Even though you're
Whether
not
the
currently
sky
looking
is dark
right
is
at it.
different than whether my car is in the driveway, because
I don't find those two questions to be equivalent, though, because there's just so much less of a burden of proof, or like there's evidence that the sky is dark. You know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
We
that's
may
a
be
whole
getting
supernatural.
that's a whole different conversation of what counts as good evidence for these claims.
That's fair.
And I think if you are asking a churchgoer, they would say they would put a lot more emphasis on the testimony of their fellow parishioners, from what they're hearing from the pulpit, from what they're reading in their book of scriptures, as that is what is compelling to them. You can
look.
Is like
Yeah,
very
you can
strong,
look at,
and if someone's
you can look
moved
at
by
the
something that happened to them, that's considered, very like good evidence that it exists. But it's like, well, we're kind of more dubious of those kind of.
Yeah, you can look at the chat, at the YouTube chat, and see Ɩnternational, who's presented these same arguments all over the internet and these are all precept arguments. How do you explain fine tuning? How do you explain first cause? How do you ground morality? Now, the honest answer is I don't know how the universe came to be. I don't know where the origin of the energy and matter that exists in our local universe. But there's a way to turn this into an argument of, well, this is what we have. It had to have started from somewhere. This is the only thing that makes sense. Therefore, down the line, therefore God, and then a couple more arguments later, therefore Christianity. So, and the people buy into this. We've seen it recently with people converting from atheism to other, to different religions. And they presented their beliefs. This is what I believe, and this is what convinced me.
Right. Yeah. We've actively seen that.
Yeah. And if I'm thinking of the same person doing the same thing, they talked about community. They talked about the people around them, right? The people that convinced them. That was, I heard a lot of that. Not I went outside and I looked at the sky. Not I went and checked on my car to see if it had been stolen or not.
Yeah.
So that is a very key point, because it more often, from when I listen or see or hear people once being non-believers and moving into a separate belief, and it may not be the previous belief that they had, and then some, but it's the fact that whoever approached them or whomever they talked to or what group they found themselves associated with, and how friendly and how easily they conveyed their ideas and perspectives and teachings and things like that, suddenly they become more propelled and gravitated to them, versus whatever type of vitriol or whatever type of bad talk was on this side. Now this side's a bit more nicer, so I'm gravitating to that. So it doesn't even appear that their rationale of converting to a different religion is from any text, or it isn't from any God that spoke to them. It's purely out of the community, the connection of said person that convinced them enough, and that they saw was honest and nice about it.
I mean, I think the arguments and the beliefs do count at some point, but you're more open to believe. You're more open to believe propositions and arguments made from somebody who's approaching you, who you feel is already on your side.
Yeah.
And in some way or another.
And if they say, I keep on telling you that they have your best interests in mind, that they're here to be your brother, your friend, your compatriot. That's some compelling things. Almost compelling as this roll of Necco wafers that I halfway eaten.
What is that? Necco
There
wafers.
we go, Necco wafers.
Sponsored by Necco wafers.
What is that? 1862, 1847.
Sponsoring this show since 1847, y'all.
That's like seeing a pack of Big League Chew.
Should I send this? Should I send a full roll to our president? What do you think? Is he going to be in need of some wafers?
Oh shit. See what you did there. Two things. One, and this is something we've often heard a lot, and I'm sure, Justin, you've also heard a lot in like Discord and everything, is atheists have their own worldview, and atheism is in itself a religion.
I think that to some extent you could argue that atheism is a worldview and that it is a foundation or a foundational position of building a worldview. I don't think that it simply cannot be a religion because there's no doctrines, there's no texts, there's no leaders, there's no rituals, there's no traditions.
Leaders can be debatable because they can argue who our leaders are.
Well, I mean, just
That's
because
true.
we have leaders doesn't mean.
Well, I mean, there's
you have a leader for the country club, and it doesn't mean the country club is a religion.
There's influencers of all stripes of all. I mean, there's workout influencers, there's makeup influencers, people that are really popular. Mascara is not a religion. I mean, it might
maybe.
seem like that.
Ask that's teenagers. Maybe it is.
That's arguable.
I guess I wonder if whenever they say, well, atheist is just a religion, I wonder if they just don't think about like what it actually means to be a religion. They just kind of like relate it to their perception. Because like if you ask them, well, what's a religion? Like it's one of those things where it's like, I think it's one of those arguments where you don't really think about it. You just kind of say it to like throw it back at somebody.
Well,
what's a religion? Describe what a religion is. And if they're like, oh, and if they try to describe it so it includes atheism, you're like, okay, so the basketball team is a religion because they're a group of people who get together and for ritual things and do stuff.
And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that atheists can be very dogmatic, just like deists, right? So there are leaders, there are popular personalities that put out their ideas and people follow them dogmatically, which is a very very familiar concept to people in a religion, because religions are very dogmatic as well in that regard. Believe this without really understanding what you're believing, and then also repeating it without being able to justify or defend it in any way. You kind of just say that it is what it is. And that's very common in atheism, and it's very common in the science communication and science as well. So that's another argument, is that science or scientism is a religion.
But there's a key that's missing. Right, and I see your point, but there's a key that's missing. Out of all of that, we remove the leaders, the text of whatever they claim is our Bible, which is like a science Bible, a science book, whatever it is.
But
yeah, the self-esteem.
Thank you. Darwin is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But atheism widely rejects spiritual beings, but religion holds on to that, no matter the religion.
Do they though? I mean, we have a movement now within these communities that we circle, where there's a big rift between atheists and atheists that reject spiritual ideas, and atheists that don't, that are into non-theistic religions, that are into.
You can believe in ghosts, which are like spiritual.
What, are you talking pagan? Pagan?
Yeah.
Or are you talking
Pagans?
Buddhist?
Pagans,
Like
pagans and Wiccans and people that are in the more Eastern religions and philosophies.
That's what I was thinking, like Buddhism, but
yeah,
I do have to say though, most Wiccans do believe in an earth deity, an earth mother. So they do have a spiritual God that they worship.
So that's a spiritual mind.
Right.
What about paganism?
Paganism in its pure form would probably be similar to that. And a lot of times, like I've known a couple of pagans that worshipped old German gods. So and that's it's one of those words that's just like atheism. You need to sit down and define it before you start. I don't want to say what paganism is because I've seen different forms of paganism. So
yeah, like I've spoken to a couple pagans, and it seems like they worship gods from like Egypt and like Greek mythologies. So like one of them was talking about like they were visited by the god of death who wanted to like recruit them for something in a dream. And when they said what the god of death was, I kind of like looked up and it was like the Egyptian god of death or something. But then another one was talking about like the Greek, like some other god of the hunt or something. So it's kind of like they kind of take an amalgamation of different, you know, at least they did. It seems like they took a bunch of different gods and put them together into what their belief is.
And these, and you're right in that these are theistic beliefs, or you know, deistic or polytheistic beliefs. But these are people that tend to convert from a monotheism like Christianity or Islam, and then they go into deism or something like this to maintain that more spiritual kind of like worldview, and that there are things that happen, things that we can't explain. There's connections, there's things that happen or whatever, but it's not mandated. There's no books. There's no religious leaders. It's just that I happen to have these connections with these otherworldly things.
So we can't definitively rule out spiritual beings because other forms of atheism, as we mentioned, paganism and Wiccan, hold on to some form of spiritual being.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing too, is like atheism, like you can be like a pure atheist, which means I don't believe in any sort of gods at all. But like, you know, if you have a diehard Christian who believes in, you know, the God according to the Bible as written, they're an atheist to like the Greek gods because they don't believe in them, or they, you know, so they're technically an atheist as to those. But it's like, you know, we're an atheist to one more God or something. But you know, believing in like ghosts or like Reiki spiritual stuff, you don't have to believe in a god to believe in that stuff. So you can still be an atheist and still believe in kind of.
I mean, we still have the modern practice of chiropractic, which is basically magic.
Well,
you get some massage therapy and then some magic.
Yeah.
Massages always feel good. You know, you can always feel good after that.
I feel like there's some like something in chiropractic, just like, you know, body stuff, but when it's like, oh, if we twist you in a specific way, we'll like open your pathways, which will flood your brain with whatever.
There is stuff because they incorporate physical therapy and massage therapy, and they incorporate a lot of real science and medical science in there, and that's the bulk of their training is that. But the chiropractic itself and the title itself and where it stemmed from, and why they go down that path, it is basically magic. They go down that path though because people feel like chiropractors are more holistic and more about treating the problem rather than the symptoms, because they claim that's, you know, these are the claims that it's a more Eastern medicine philosophy of we're going to heal the mind and body and soul all together and get at the root of the problem, rather than just, you know, give you pills to mask the problem.
See, this is why I'm having some contingency with adding Wiccan and paganism to the atheist dichotomy, I guess you could say, because the basic rationale of being an atheist, your denial in a spiritual being. So I don't think Wiccan and paganism can be attributed to atheism.
I agree.
So therefore,
it really depends on what kind of paganism, because like if you're a Wiccan who just believes like doing certain spells affects the world and that spiritual stuff, you don't believe like a god has anything to do with it, I guess technically you can be a Wiccan and an atheist. From what I'm aware of pagans, you actually like, it's just you have a bunch of gods you can pick from and you kind of like worship which one you choose, and they don't like fight over you, and they, you know, it's more a kinder religion, but you still believe in a god of some, you believe in gods of some sort, so you can't really, and if you believe in those gods, you can't be a pagan and an atheist, because that.
Yeah, I think the general point of the whole tangent was that being an atheist does not necessarily mean that you reject all spiritual or supernatural claims.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Personally, because believing in things for bad reasons is a bad plan for yourself, certainly, and for others, possibly.
So I have a question. What would you call somebody who has actually worshipped a god that they didn't believe in?
What?
You know, someone that faked it till they made it.
Not necessarily
Yeah.
faked it, that had fun doing it, you know. Because there are anti-religions like the
troll.
Church of
Crazy.
of the
Yeah.
Subgenius or Discordianism, and
Yeah.
I've been a Discordian most of my life, so I've done all the Orisian rituals.
Or
and had fun doing it.
The Satanic Temple. I mean, these are basically like satirical or
Right.
or what you would call modernly would be you call them trolls because they're trolling these
Religion.
dominant religions. So I don't think there's a title for that other than somebody that's being intentionally dishonest to serve some greater purpose.
Yeah, I guess you could also not believe in a god, but still go through all the rituals that would be associated with appeasing the god, just because you think, hey, just in case. I mean, I guess that's the only. I wouldn't know what to call that if they're like, I don't really believe God exists, but I'm still going to go to church every Sunday and
kind of like superstitions.
pay my tithing and pray and not have sex before marriage and all of that. All the things they say not to do, just in case. But I don't really believe that it's there. It's kind of like a call them a Pascalian because they're following
somebody
Pascal's
that did
wager.
something like that. I mean, they could be doing the whole religious thing just for the social aspects of it and to get along with their family and stuff like that, right? They may not believe, but they're in a position where they can't not do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking in a sense where like no one's forcing them to do it, but they just do it for like kind of like some other, like I guess if it's social, well they'd still be an atheist then because they don't believe it, but they just go through the ritual. But it's like someone who goes through the ritual just in case there actually is a god. They don't really believe it's there, but just in case there is.
They're betting on Pascal's wager.
Yeah, they're Pascalian.
Yeah.
Pascalian.
Yep.
Pascalian.
I'm gonna trademark that.
Have you ever run the numbers past somebody who gives you Pascal's wager to tell you, to say, hey, how do you know you're with all these different versions of all the different religions, how do you tell that you've got the right one? Isn't it better to not believe and then try to take your chances and saying, hey, I was a good person, but I didn't get it wrong. May have not have got it right, but I didn't get it wrong.
I didn't worship the other guy.
There's
I don't know.
they try to apply like mathematical formulas of like based on all these different arguments and inputs. This is the likelihood that this proposition is true. And then when you add up all the propositions across all of the different, arguments and assertions that are made, you can come to a mathematically safe conclusion there.
Okay.
And then it's what do I believe the math, therefore I believe God. That's they're making some strange leaps.
Anytime you multiply something by zero, it's zero.
Thanks, don't give up.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
He will solely defend. He will be our lone defender in the chat.
Ollie man, it just hit us with some knowledge that anytime. What say it again?
I said anytime you multiply something by zero, you end up with zero. So.
And you can't argue with that.
No,
that's math. Unless you don't believe math exists. I don't know.
That's a fact.
He's working on getting a segment. He's thinking. He's going through the motions.
ʻOllieman math facts. Did you know that 2 times 2 equals 4, and that's been ʻOllieman's math facts.
That's what you'll get most weeks.
Other weeks he's just high. See, lighting up right now. On cue. Oh gosh. I just got a message from Normalizing Atheism. They would very much like to speak on this topic, which we will more than likely bridge about it more in the Discord. So stay tuned for that. So yes, Normalizing Atheism. We will see you in the Discord to expand upon this. But anything additional?
One thing I wanted to clear, but I might have gotten it wrong, is the idea of Gnostic mean that you cannot know it or just that you don't know it?
Thank you.
I think I might have mixed that up when I tried to use agnostic for like whether my car is outside, because
I would like that
I can go check and see if my car is outside, but if it's something like, can we know what happened on this spot like 325 years ago at exactly like 4:33, I might be like, I'm agnostic as to that because I can never know what happened on this spot because we don't have records of what happened on this spot or something. That might be like maybe that's where I'm mixed up when we were talking about like whether it's dark outside or whether my car is.
I think the term Gnostic came from a group of Christians, the Gnostic Christians, who were saying they had been given divine knowledge, so they knew things. An agnostic without knowledge is so that you do not know for a fact. So that's how it's kind of the words have moved through time.
Wouldn't a Gnostic? I'm so sorry, Malti. Wouldn't a Gnostic theist be a Calvinist? Aren't they the ones that attribute being received the divine word, and therefore whoever is a Calvinist will truly go to heaven, and everyone else is just on their own shit?
Yeah, but the Gnostic school was something different. So it was crushed by the early church, actually. If you want to read some Gnostic stuff, the Nag Hammadi scrolls.
Nag Hammadi scrolls. I feel like I've heard of that.
They were found in Egypt, and the Gospel of Doubting Thomas is in there. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene is in there. So and this was some of the special knowledge that the Gnostics had that the other Christians didn't have.
So, I mean, as far as how the word has evolved over time, Calvinism may fit into that. Sure, I really don't know much about Calvinism, so.
I think Calvinism is just the idea that everyone is preordained to some path. So, like, if you don't become if you don't, you're gonna end up in hell because you've just been preordained to end up in hell, or God knows ahead of time, or everyone's been determined where they end up. So you just kind of gotta hope that you're one of the people who end up getting, inspired by the Lord and, become theists and follow God so you go to heaven. Or, you end up just being one of the people who don't get convinced or turned away or etc. and end up going to hell because that's just your fate, essentially. That's what my understanding of what it means to be part of the Calvinist idea.
So, additional to that, if someone is a Calvinist or labels themselves as such, they have already been given the light of God, or I guess to use that fancy phrase. So you can't be a Calvinist if you haven't gotten that message, or you can't. Okay.
No, so a Calvinist, from my understanding, is that like you don't really have free will. It's kind of like from the beginning, like it has been determined that Jena shall be an atheist and shall go to hell because she will not be convinced of God. Whereas Justin, in 20 years from now, he will be met by an angel and will convince him, and he will be led into the kingdom of God. And there's nothing really he can do about it because it's already been preordained. So it's like,
put that in your calendar, Justin.
Yeah, I have, but it's like, I mean, you can be I guess you can be a Calvinist and be convinced that you're going to hell because you just don't believe. Like, it's kind of weird why you would believe that, or you can be convinced that you're going to hell because you don't, you are going down a path that will lead you to it. But it's kind of weird to be like an atheist who's also a Calvinist, or someone who hasn't been convinced of God yet but is a Calvinist. But I guess some Calvinists might say that someone who doesn't believe, they might be preordained to believe just down the line somewhere, or maybe they're preordained to never believe and they're just going to go to hell because that was God's plan from the beginning. So it's kind of like a harsh reality sort of thing where it's like there are just some people who are not meant to be saved, and if you're an atheist, you might not be one of them, and that's just God's will. Whereas all these other people were because they've found the light of the Lord.
Okay.
From my understanding, I could be totally wrong, and people can roast me in the comments about how I don't know what Calvinism is.
Hey, I mean, Otangelo did. He said it's not biblical, so strike one.
That doesn't mean anything. People can still even if it's not biblical, people can still believe in that sort of thing.
I mean, that's fair. I did just think of an idea because I would assume none of us are really, philosophy heavy or philosophers in a sense. And so I know of at least 2 or 3 individuals I may possibly invite on to continue this conversation, because it's one thing to, gain a basic perspective or basic understanding of philosophy, but it's a whole nother realm when you have learned people on it. And both of these individuals I'm thinking of, one is actually a believer and one isn't. So stay tuned to that. I'm cooking it up.
But to answer the question that Jena kind of posited as maybe like either on Twitter or here is no, you don't need to have any philosophy knowledge to be an atheist. You could just not believe because you're not convinced and have no idea how to spell philosophy or what that is and still be an atheist.
Thank you. And Roland, God dang it.
I agree, but there's certain circles and contexts where other people would disagree, and that saying that the term means this, and to utilize that term or to claim that, then you should understand what you're talking about, and also that it means something different than what you're trying to convey.
I mean, you could just be some like random person who's like, I was told this stuff and I just think it doesn't make any sense, so I don't believe it. Yeah, I don't know how much philosophy is involved in that, because there are some people who are like, they were 7 years old and they were told these stories of God and everything, and they're just like, this doesn't make any sense, or this just sounds like superhero stuff. I don't believe this. I don't know how much philosophy they put into that, but I'd still consider them an atheist because they don't believe that it actually is.
If you put the book next to your Spider-Man comic books, you might be in that category.
Which one? And you know what, Roland? Thank you. Like, you're just on top of it, hon. I didn't clip the poll that I did on Twitter early in the week, but I do have it pulled up now, so I will share my screen and view the results with you all. So, question was earlier in the poll for the IFWAS Twitter channel, does one need to have even just the basic level of understanding of philosophy to classify themselves as an atheist? 7 votes in, no one declared yes, of course. Majority declared no, of course not. And the rest, I know that I don't know. And there's Roland saying they're a skeptic. So, def not.
Well, I didn't specifically say I was a skeptic, but I said, like, again, you can be an atheist just looking at it as a 7-year-old and saying this is stupid. Like, this just sounds stupid. I don't believe in it, and that's it. That's hardly philosophy. But I think if you're like a skeptic, you really have to like understand kind of like some fallacies and know when those apply and like what good reasoning is, and that if that falls under philosophy, I feel like you need that to be a skeptic.
I made my first big leap in atheism when I was about 14, when I really knew nothing about philosophy. But as I got older, the philosophy helped me to explain my atheism.
Yeah.
And I have just a modicum of philosophy understanding. So, but it did help me. It did help me voice my beliefs better.
Yeah, I think it's like something that's very helpful to know and have, but it's not like a necessary requirement of being an atheist.
I'm enjoying your back and forth, Justin.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Well, this was good. Thank you, Justin, for presenting this expanded topic on non-belief. And I know philosophy seems to be quite essential to most. I certainly don't recognize it as essential for myself. And I would kind of bite back on what you said, Roland, as far as, you need to know those fallacies in order to be a skeptic. I mean, I guess, sure, to some extent, but that I don't think that really holds weight for a lot of people. At least it doesn't hold weight for me. It's just, I'm not presented with a being or anything that would convince me enough to believe that there is some type of being that's watchful and all-knowing and the shit that, us humans go through on a daily basis. And then if there was one, because this question is often asked too, like, okay, well, if God did present themselves, then would you believe then? And I'd say fuck no still, because what the Bible or what the Christian Bible, and still it still falls back on what fucking God. But anyway, for the sake of argument, Christian, what the Christian Bible says and the stories and the parables and everything else is bullshit too. So yeah, fine. I will believe that a God exists, so I will no longer be an atheist, but would I follow such being? No. And that is all. Thank you for my TED Talk. Thank you, Justin.
Welcome to that hour-long TED Talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's definitely more to talk about with this, and I'd be interested in talking to people that are much more informed on these things.
I'm glad you said that.
I'm waiting. Go
give
ahead.
him
I'm
a ring.
sorry.
No. That was all I was going to say.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say I'm waiting for Ollieman to give us a Bertrand Russell quote.
No.
I'm sure that's a quote somewhere. I'm sure he said that at some point.
How much
Probably
weed
did.
can you fit in a teapot that's floating around Jupiter?
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. That's the real
It
question.
depends
Yeah.
on the
Go, Ollieman. Go. Tell us.
how much weed can you fit in a teapot floating around Jupiter.
Mhm.
Or
that
Saturn,
would depend.
whatever planet you want.
How about my living room? That way I can grab it and smoke it.
All right.
And there you go.
I don't know that your living room is a celestial body, but whatever.
It works for me though.
Oh, he's high enough for it to
Depends
be.
what you mean by celestial
Oh.
body, Faulty. Let's
Yeah,
get
yeah.
into specifics of
You
this.
guys haven't
Uma
seen it, but
Thurman?
my
Yeah,
dog's
I
got
know.
the cone on, so it could just orbit her head. My dog's got the cone on right now because she's got a sore on her leg. Come here, Bailey. Come here.
You don't have to shame her.
The cone of shame.
Baby.
Come here,
Dang.
show the cone of shame. Poor pupper.
Hi. Aw, you
Aw.
poor doggy. How dare you, Ollie, man? How dare
Hey,
you?
it's for her own good.
I
She's,
understand.
like I said, she's been picking at her leg, so I just wanted to heal up.
I heard they
just
did
had to
that to
tell her
all
to
the dogs
stop.
in Canada.
What?
Well,
I said I
I-
heard they did that to all the dogs in Canada.
Every
Put
No.
cones on them. No?
Only when they're hurt, right?
All right. I think we're done.
anyways, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Speaking of
So-
hurt, you'd be very hurt if you don't join us in the Discord after.
That's
Ugh,
right.
Rollin, you're beautiful. Yes, please join Justin, Jena, and the crew in the International Free Thinkers Discord, tiny.cc/IFDC. As I mentioned, good friend of the show, Normalizing Atheism, will be there. He wants to expand a little bit more on this talk. And he's actually one of the people that I'm trying to pull in this discussion. And I will pull in another good friend of mine that's just as philosophically learned in this. So join us there. We will expand more on this discussion. Tangelo, you're not invited. I'm pretty sure we banned you. So good luck. Final words. You guys look great today.
Aw.
Well, yeah, Rollin, Jenna voted you as the most attractive person on the stream.
Apparently,
That's right.
I get a link that from Justin that I get added by Justin that says apparently you're the most attractive person on IFWAS, and I'm just like I'm so confused. And then he's like, well, Jenna said so, and I'm like, okay.
She
Like,
I
did.
mean,
there
I
you
keep
go.
you in my basement for a reason.
I know,
She-
just to look at me. And I'm
She
single,
said-
everybody. So,
She said it on my show, so
Ah.
I'm a witness.
Mm.
jeez.
Eligible. They are eligible. No, sorry, wrong
Yep.
button. There you
So,
go. Eligible.
I have all my wolf things behind me. That's my contribution to the relationship.
You had something to say before we sign off, Multi?
No, just, I don't know. Atheism. Don't forget atheism. You don't have to be an atheist. You can be an atheist as well.
That's a public service announcement. Multi.
It's okay. You don't have to be an idiot. Give me your hand.
You don't have to give in to their terms and demands.
Brilliant. All right, we are signing off. See you guys in the Discord. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll also see you next week. Bye-bye.